Hey guys, welcome to a With Friends episode with special guest today, Veronica Kissling. Veronica is the creator of the Empire Accelerator Method, where she combines neuroscience, spiritual wisdom, and high level business strategy to help entrepreneurs scale with ease. Veronica, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Of course, of course. So we both, so as a purpose and mindset coach yourself, you and I, we really connected over having like this deep purpose in our business and our heartfelt, I would say, like passions to just serve and help others open up their lives too. So let's just start for today. Like, tell us a little bit about who we are actually talking to. And then I know you and I were going to bring forth this like competing belief about what you can really have in business and what you can really have in relationships, and can you have both? So first, start us off with your story.
Um, so I think my story started since I was 12, where I really knew that I wanted to start this empowering foundation. Um, I didn't really know what it meant there or the path that I was going to take. I think I went through a path of like trying to validate myself and my worth and how intelligent I was. And that completely deviated me and took me into a different world where I ended up, studying financial engineering and being in consulting and being the right hand of CEOs and everything, which was amazing for my ego, but it was terrible for my
Mhm.
um and it was not until probably about like 12 years later, exactly the same amount of time, that I decided to say like, no, I no longer want to live in this unalignment. And I actually quit everything as I knew it. I like to say it was quitting my identity, my job, my
Mhm.
degree, my friendships, not my family, but basically being away from my family, right? I decided to go to Europe for 6 months. And I had to recreate myself. It was all about like realigning myself and my essence. And that's really how it started.
Gosh, and I love how you, so casual you are about this. Like how you're like, oh, I just up and went to Europe and I just reinvented myself, and it's just so casual. So I just like, I want to. I don't want to downplay it, right? Because
Yes.
especially where, for instance, like I've been in a season of reinventing too, and it's there's a lot of discomfort.
Mhm.
There's a lot of struggle that is part of it. But I what I love so much is like where you're at now, the space
Yeah.
that you're in now, where you are so confident, you are so aligned, and I think that that's the you're the perfect example of the gift that gets to happen on the other side of a transformation.
Well, thank you for that, beautiful saying of I'm the gift of that other side of transformation. But I think you're absolutely right. Right now, I'm in a very blessed space where I even say like to my clients, I'm like, my biggest thing that I want to achieve is for you to not be reactive. And I think that's a place where I'm right now, where I don't give it either a good energy or a bad energy towards anything, even money,
Mhm.
because it just is. Everything, it's good or bad depending on the meaning that you give it. But you're absolutely right. It wasn't at that time. It wasn't a just like, oh, I pick up and left. Like that's kind of what it felt. But mind you, the day before I was packing up my apartment in Chicago, I was like 8 p.m. watching like Man on the Edge, not packed anything, and just like there, like crying, texting one of my friends in the building. She's like, "Have you packed?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "I'm matching one and Man on the Edge," and she's like, "Go pack." I'm like, "It's so tense. I can't. I need to watch the movie." She's like, "Why are you watching that?" It's like you already have enough tension in your life. And the movers were coming like 7 a.m. the next morning. Uh, and she like ran upstairs and helped me. Thank God for her.
Oh.
But things like that. Or then when I was even in Europe, I was like, I remember I would be like texting my best friend, voice noting her, because I'm like, I feel so alone. And she's like, you're seriously not crying in Paris. She's like, just go out there and like do something. And I'm like, but I feel alone. I don't have you or my
I
family.
I gotta say, I've never heard that quote, but I think you should run with it. Like, there's no crying in Paris. There's no crying in Paris.
Yes. And it sounds silly to us now. And even when she told me, I'm like, damn, am I ridiculous? But it's true, because when you're in it, especially when you don't have the tools to cope, And I was learning, right? I had been studying the tools for probably a couple months. Uh, but it was just the beginning of me studying the tools. It was like the first 3 months even of me starting to get introduced by it. So it was very daunting, right? And it came from a place of like, I didn't even know how to be single before. I didn't know how to be by myself. And I think like, many of us like it's something that you grow up with as a little kid because you can't do things by yourself, right? So since a young age, you're conditioned to always depend on someone or depend on people around you. And I think the most powerful experience for me was being 6 months away in Europe where I was with no one. Yeah, it doesn't mean I didn't have the financial means to not support myself. I'm not saying I was in a ditch. I was out of that like state of survival, but I
Hmm.
didn't have anyone around me. I knew no one. I was talking to no one. Everybody was in a different time zone.
Yeah, you intentionally stripped yourself from familiarity so
Mhm.
that you could experience like really truly like the discomfort of
Yeah.
getting out of the comfort zone so that you almost like forced yourself through growth. You forced
Yes.
yourself through like this new identity transformation. Now, okay, so I'm just sitting here and I'm like, man, how do you like you're in this moment, you're in Paris, you're crying. Like, did you know what you were doing at the time? Like, did you know you were intentionally reinventing yourself, or were you running from something? Like, how do you get to that point where you willingly, I guess, accept or take this path?
I think it's how they say people don't change until shit hits the fan, and excuse my French, but I just I hated my life and and by hate, I was very grateful for it, but I was just not fulfilled.
Yeah,
And things come to you in different ways, right? But I think there's a moment of you where it doesn't matter if you believe in God, spirituality, whatever that is. I'm very big on spirituality now and religion. But if you don't, and I heard this and it was so powerful, but if you don't continuously break your vessel, God will break it for you. So if you don't actively reinvent yourself and work on yourself, God will bring a disaster, whether that is something as awful as cancer or a divorce, to break that hard headed head that you have so that you work on the things that you have to.
I have never heard it that way. I still have chills. I'm almost like actually in tears because you're so right. Like, I think about the biggest changes in my life have happened when either the God broke the vessel, or I chose to break it before he could or would.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah, that was geez Louise, that's a good one. I can't wait to like share that one with everybody. So you're okay, so you're like, you know what? I've got to break the vessel. Got to break the vessel. What I would
Well,
say like
the
oh,
the
go ahead.
vessel felt broken by God at that point, right? Because I
Mm,
was just unaligned. My health wasn't good. Actually, that's kind of like the probably the catalyst for it. Um, I had a lot of acne and I had like liver problems at that point, which to a woman, vanity, that external thing, it's like the weight, all these things, you start gaining weight. But the person, at least for me, it didn't make or break that, right? But the vanity of not even being able to go outside without makeup or even wanting to see anyone with makeup because my face was so messed up, that was like one of the last like rocks to fall, aside from, being at my job, not liking what I did, feeling like I wasn't helping anyone.
yeah.
So it was like that breaking where I decided to like drop everything and leave it. Did I know where I was heading into? No. And they say like don't think too much about it because then you won't do it.
Yep.
And that is the whole thing about like let's make a decision and then you think about it in a sense, and that's how you actually create big changes. Because I knew I quit at my job So that meant I quitted to my working visa. That meant I had to leave the US by default. So that meant that was already positioning me. I didn't want to come to Costa Rica, so it's like, what can I do? But I wasn't thinking that far ahead. I was just thinking, I'm out of my relationship. I'm out of this job. What do I want to do? At that moment, I was practicing high ticket sales. I wasn't actually doing anything, but I'm like, this is my plan to rely to be able to feed for myself. And that completely got discarded and I went to another route. But it was just enough to have a fallback plan of how can I survive to not be in a scarcity, like survival, like how am I going to eat or where am I going to live?
Yep.
But it wasn't enough to actually be like, oh, I know how I'm going to build the life that I want. So it was the
Fair.
courage enough to do it, but I had no plan.
That's, yep, courage was the word coming through for me too. Like courage to, because so often we have no idea how we're going to do it. And we have zero concept of what's actually on the other side, because more times than not, if we're willing to surrender, it's actually 10 times better than what our little brains could have even come up with, even if we tried. So you're so right. Like just having the courage to lean
Yeah.
into that, the courage to pursue, like the courage to acknowledge this isn't what I want anymore and to do
Yeah.
something different with it. So when would you say things really started turning around for you from a, like you started feeling more alignment, and
Mhm.
what did you do with that? What did that kind of lead to?
So in that, after I decided to kind of drop everything, leave everything, that was probably around New Year's time. That I was with my family and I was just like crying 3 days in a row, working, my job, trying to do high ticket training or like training with someone. I was just like crying. And after the third day, my best friend and my dad told me, like, if you're so miserable, why are you doing that? And I
Mm.
said, yeah, why am I doing that? Just to be able to afford my rent? And there I was like, okay, what can I do to not have to pay for my rent? I was like, you know what? I'll just move in with my best friend into her room. Um, No, which is what it was just like kind of like how Dorothy, like a Wizard of Oz says, it's just like just take the next step and the next one will line up. So it's like just what's the proximity to me that makes me feel most in alignment, right? And at that moment, while I was in this transition, I had a friend of mine that she's like, "Why don't you help me with my business? You're not working. Let me pay you for it. You've been doing this for 10 years, like because I didn't have my business, right? So I'm like, let me help everybody else with their business." Um, which is not by any means what I do right now, but it was how it started. She's like, "You'd be a really good coach." And I just and I've always been obsessed with like psychology and neuroscience. And I just so happened to stumble into she's like, go look into this. I'm like, okay. And while I was at it, I was like, oh yeah, now I get what she says, that I love this. And that's where I started feeling into alignment. And I started realizing things that I had to, change to step into it. For example, coaching, it's not about giving your experience or giving your opinion, is about having people actually think about what's best for them. And then you can cue in. It's not about telling, it's about asking.
Yep, asking to pull it out of them, because everybody's story is different. Everybody, what everybody is going to stumble into and it light a fire, it's going to be different for everybody. So you're right. Yeah, coaching
Yeah.
is the ability and the gift and the responsibility of being able to ask the right questions to create almost like triggers inside somebody
Yes.
else.
Yes.
Mhm.
Um, so that kind of headed that direction, me changing my thought process even of, always having an agenda before the way that I question things, like in the business world versus like I cannot have an agenda because I can't guide you to the place that I might want to go. It's the place that is in your best way and it will only be revealed to me as I ask more. Um,
Yeah.
and so I shifted that paradigm and that also kind of transmuted into my life where it's like, we always try to have so much control. And I think it's one of the biggest corrections that the human nature needs to do. And I've been there that we feel we need to control. And it's like, you're just a fool if you think you can control everything. Even your financial, like, let me give you the most tangible example. People think they have financial control by saving, investing into all of these. Think about all the financial crises, the biggest banks failing. And I get it, then now they have something. But even if you had stack and packed hundreds of thousands into your savings account, you would have not predicted that a financial bank would collapse. The real
Yeah.
estate, like all of these things, it's like you have no control. Really, it's all about learning to surrender. And
Hmm.
so for me, it was a big thing to learning also how to receive. As females, that's the biggest thing that we struggle with, receiving, right? We give, but how can you be a giver? How can other be givers? Why are you prying other people if you can't even receive that, right?
Yeah.
So all of this started, coming into place. I started being more feminine. I was very masculine oriented. And so I went completely feminine. Like, eh, let me just, let me just not actually, I stopped the doing and went only into the being. Um, and so that's where I kind of fell into alignment because I started dropping into the essence of like a female of who she is. And I don't care about the disparities of men, females, all those debates. It's still you have in your chromosomes, you have an essence to your being, right?
Mm.
There's just a way your soul picked a female versus male body at the time of birth, and it acquired those characteristics, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So that I started just feeling into alignment. And when it really hit me was where I started landing corporate clients, and I didn't even have like the background of actually having that one-on-one clients before I even started having those conversations. And I was like, oh man, this is actually what my calling is. Because I always talked about purpose. I grew up with it. And then they were hiring me for it. And when we were doing negotiations, they were like, we wouldn't hire you because you are very young. This is not, all these different things that we have is maybe it's either you're too young or you're too old. And all these things started showing up, but they were just like, you are the person for this job. It doesn't matter. I think at that time it was like 26, 25, but it was like, we wouldn't hire you exactly because of your age, but because exactly of your age and the topic that you're bringing, you're the only candidate for that.
1000%. one thousand
So it,
percent.
so it was like, because it's you, this is for you. So I was like, oh, I see it. This is for me. And that's
Mhm.
where it's just like the hyper will of like alignment went in because you double down on that.
Yes, yes, all of this. Okay, so you just hit on so many things, and I really want to something that's jumping out, and what we kind of talked about too earlier is this the idea of being able to receive and stepping into that like feminine energy and really starting to embody that. So I want to talk about those concepts, like the way that you started to see them, not only in your business, which you kind of mentioned, but then how that started to permeate into other parts of your life.
Mhm.
So with that, like where did you start to see so that you kind of give the example about the business, where else did
Mhm.
you start to see these changes and these shifts start happening?
I think receiving is the most underrated thing that we think we do. We think we're so good at receiving. And I would challenge everybody that says that because if you don't receive random $100 coupons to get free nails, or you don't receive free things at raffles, if you're
Mm.
not receiving like random things, maybe somebody like, you were very kind, so the waiter even sent you a plate. Maybe it was your best friend's birthday. It's not about pretty privilege, how people say.
No.
Yes, that can play a part, but it's about the pretty privilege. It's really just they believe that they deserve it so they can be in that receiving energy. But it's much more deeper than that. It's the energy that you exude. And I can even tell you, like, from clients that that's something that we're working on, and they're like, wow, this is insane. She's like, just this week, I got a free facial, I got a free business upgrade, I got a free nail salons. And like, this has been in the course of like a month. She's like, my man got me flowers, all these things, which is like, even the receival of flowers, it sounds mundane, but that is a big thing. So, and she's like, I don't know if it's that I just never noticed it, or is it that it's more now that I'm actually working on this, but I see it. And
Mhm.
I was like, reflect back. Did you receive these things before? Right. And I think you start seeing it in everything. Like this will sound very, and this might, you know, this might feather, what you call it,
Ruffle feathers, let's do
ruffle feathers. Yes, but it's like, I'm sorry, but if you don't have a spouse, a supportive partner that supports you, then it might be that you're not fully receiving. How do I know that? Because my partner before, I was even paying for expensive dinners. I gave him all my money to build his business. So, and I'm the same me. What's one of the biggest difference, aside from all the tools that I have now, of course, is that I
that.
can receive. And it's like you can see it in all areas of your life. And it started from me not receiving a compliment. If somebody tells you like you look amazing, or you've lost so much weight, or you don't have acne, or you look beautiful, I would be like, oh yeah, but like, can you see my acne here? They're like, your makeup is so pretty. I'm like, but like, oh yeah, because I'm covering all my acne, things like that. But it's very simple things, and it starts with being able to receive even the simplest things, like a compliment, the help to put your suitcase up when you're putting your luggage up. It's just simple things like that.
It's simple things like that, but then it's just this it's the ripple effect, and it's a
Yes.
very real ripple effect. And so first, sure, maybe it starts with like saying, "Yes, you can help me with my suitcase," or maybe receiving the extra dinner plate. That was a great example too. And then what happens with the ripple effect is the way that it absolutely starts showing up in our relationships, in the way
Mhm.
that we it allows us to connect on a different level. And you mentioned like in your previous relationship this kind of the struggle with the receiving, but when like I'm thinking right now of I mean, I'm very open and upfront about the relationship that I've got with my husband. I mean, we're best friends. I've got all of the support in the world, and there's not a single day that I take it for granted. There's an appreciation there. And I think that when you start being willing to receive, willing to believe, I think too that there's a belief in there of like what we're worthy of, like a self, like
100,000%.
right? Like, so what
Yes.
we're worthy of, so what we're willing to receive, what we're willing to give, and what we believe we're worthy of, and the
Yeah.
exchange that happens there, and then the way that it just continues to like fuel over and over and over again.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Let me give you the biggest example because you asked about business. Well,
Yeah.
let me because it's very obvious in relationship or these examples that I gave, but how do you see this in business, right? So in business, imagine if somebody, maybe you're picture the scenario. Somebody comes and they ask you for, I don't know, maybe money, or like they always say like, "Hey, do you want cookies?" Maybe let's say we're in the office. Do you want a cookie? Do you want a cookie? Do you want a brownie? And you always say no, 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 no. Then after a while, it's just gonna be like, I'm not gonna offer her a cookie because she always says no. Maybe that day she did want a cookie, right? And it's the
Yep.
same thing in business. God will come and they will give you different abundances in different places. Hey, maybe you see a dollar? Hey, do you want a dollar here? Hey, do you want a free dessert here? Oh, let me give you a compliment. It's all these receiving places, right? And then if you always say, no, no, I don't need that. I don't blah, 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 all these things, then you're always declining, declining, declining. So after a while, it's going to be like, you know what? Even for your business, I'm not going to give you the money, right?
I'm
It
gonna
sounds
shut
so funny.
every door, shut every door since you were doing it anyway.
Yeah, let me just not open the doors because I want to go because you want to go give the cookie, not to the person that always say no. You want to maybe the fat guy on the side that always says, "Oh hell yeah, give me 5 cookies." Right? They're so good, and he's so appreciative and thankful for you thinking of giving him cookies. It's the same thing with money.
It's the same thing with money. It's the same thing with business. It's the same thing with
Mhm.
relationships. Okay, so we had talked about in this receiving, do you think that there's a cap? Do you think that you can only receive to a certain amount?
Let me
And
ask you
that's
this.
not that yeah, and that's not like a trick question. That's the question that's coming through for like both of us. And I'm contemplating the answer even too.
Let me ask you this. Do you think God has a capacity.
Never.
And
No, there's no capacity for him.
let me ask you even this. Money, is it capped to something, or does the government just print more and you have inflation?
Well, our government just keeps printing more. But I mean, money I think that it flows in abundance. And I see even too, like in the interactions in some of the examples that you've brought forth about like how like if you're willing to receive money as much as you're willing to spend money, like it's just this ever flowing.
Mhm.
Flowing is the word that comes through. It's flowing.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Why don't we get unlimited everything? There's two reasons. If you're talking more of like the spiritual realm. The first one, your vessel can't hold it, right? So that's how you see people that win the lottery and then just
Mhm.
a couple of years later they're bankrupt, or they say it's the worst thing that could have ever happened to them.
Yeah.
They just don't have the capacity. So if you maybe are not financially where you want to be, it's because you can't hold the amount of money that you want, right? You will say you want to be a millionaire, billionaire. Maybe you just wouldn't be able to hold that. Like, let me ask you this: if you wake up as a billionaire tomorrow, what would you do,
Do
right?
you know what to do with it? Yeah.
And then the second part of that is, oh, and even relationships, right? Why are you not with your soulmate? Because you would probably destroy your soulmate and you would end that relationship as quickly as it came.
Oh my gosh, girl, some of the stuff you say, I'm like, we are the same soul, like twin flame stuff. Like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
we're vibing. We're vibing.
I love it. Yes, yes. I love and loving this conversation. Uh, and the second thing that we say, in the spiritual wisdom of why you don't get the things that you want, it's because we have this thing as humans, and this is why we're born into different families, different situations, all these things, where we need to feel like we earned it. So if they give you all the money in the world, like a millionaire, you just boop, it disappears because you didn't feel you did anything to earn it, right? But if you have been, and it doesn't happen to all the people that, win the lottery or win money overnight, right? But
Yeah,
if you have not worked for it, you feel like you don't deserve it. It's like,
going
yeah, it's like if you give the example of the kids that, grew up with all the financial wealth in the world, they didn't have to earn it, they didn't have to do anything. And then even multiple generations down, the whole business is gone because each generation they didn't earn it. So actually, why all of us came here to earth and we just have so many things that we have unlimited potential. If you have a dream, a desire in you, whether that's a dream, a family, a financial wealth, anything like that is done, like that's it. And so it is. It's for you. But now it comes in all the work that you have to do, all the spiritual work that you have to do.
It does. And I want to talk, I want to unpack this so passionately with you because so literally, I think about even my own journey, and I think you can relate with this with like how many layers of thyself, like I have peeled back and still had this incredible interaction just a couple weeks ago with someone who I had literally, I said hello to them and asked them to tell me about the book that they had written. That was it. It was a 4-minute conversation, if at best. And fast forward a couple weeks later, and they're literally reaching out to me and they're like, Britt, it's been put on my heart. I'm supposed to work with you. Where do I sign up? And I actually like I had to pause because I was working through it and I was like, what is happening right now? Why am I not excited? I actually called some girlfriends. I was like, why am I not like through the moon? Oh my gosh, elated about this opportunity. What is happening? And as I'm kind of working through it, it hands down words out of my mouth where I just don't feel like I've earned this. And thank gosh for like the beautiful reflection back to me where my girlfriend was like, B, you've earned this. Everything up to this point in time that you have done, not done, every choice, every tear, every accomplishment, like everything up to this point, you have absolutely earned this. This is happening for you. If you weren't ready for something like this, if you hadn't earned this, it wouldn't quite literally be handed on a plate to you as a gift. That it wasn't about earning, it was about I'd been prepared. And
Yeah.
that was really what I took away from it. Was like,
Wow.
wait a second, no, I've been preparing for
Yeah.
this. And in that mind shift, the it wasn't about earning, it wasn't about what I can earn, what I had worked hard for or not worked hard
Yeah.
for, what I deserve or what I was worthy of. It
Yeah.
was just this total mind shift that happened that was like, wait a second. No, I've been
So powerful.
preparing for
Yeah.
this. I'm prepared for this,
And
and
it so
shifted everything.
powerful. And you could have
Shift,
self-sabotaged, which is what most of us do. You could have postponed all these conversations. We won't go into that rabbit hole, but
yeah, all of it.
thank God you caught yourself before you actually went into I haven't earned this. Let me self-sabotage myself into this. And
Yeah.
sometimes the opportunity will remain there for you. Why?
Yep.
Just so that you work through that little piece that you need to work in you. Like this
Yeah.
opportunity that I told you at the beginning, because I was self-sabotaging that thing over and over again. But it was just there because it was the thing that I needed to believe in myself and I needed to correct that piece of you. So good things might wait for you, but because it serves the purpose of fixing that little thing that you have to work through. So
Yep.
I love that for you. I'm celebrating it.
Thank Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think it came down to like this a common theme that I keep seeing obviously is the surrender, and you pressed on
Yeah.
that too. So like surrender, also getting curious. Like I think that was a game changer for me. Like in that moment where I'm like, why am I not excited? Uh, just even being able to ask that question unlocks possibility. So like having that curiosity. Anything else that
Mm,
come to mind? Oh, I think you kind of mentioned like an appreciation for things. Like if we're working through these two ways that we always tend to limit ourselves,
mhm.
what are some other tools that you could say like that you'd want to leave listeners with on how to remove these barriers? So curiosity, courage, we talked about gratitude.
Mhm. Which barriers?
The like that your vessel can't hold it. So I loved
Mhm,
that you gave us the perfect example about like, okay, so then go break your vessel or your vessel's gonna get broken, like for
mhm.
you. So just acknowledging that you don't have the capacity. And then the second kind of cap is just that we need to feel like we've earned it. Do you have anything else that kind of comes to mind on either of those two?
It's a lot about doing deserving work. It's about, like you said, it's about worthiness. And the reason why we went into these spaces, it's because of that art of receiving and that
Mm,
worthiness piece of you that is so big. And
so
simple tools that I can leave the audience with. It's thinking about times where maybe you haven't felt deserving, you haven't felt worthy, maybe looking, kind of what are instances and why. Um, and honestly, I know that we're going to talk this at the end, but it's like if you want to step into that like space of like the evolution of you, I host a workshop that it's like full on a monthly basis. It's invitation only, but we'll get more into that. But 100% there, we'll be breaking a ton of those things.
go into it now. Absolutely. Yeah. Go into it now. This deserving and work. Like, tell us more about the workshop.
Yeah, it's this workshop that I like to host. It's free because it's invitation only. It's a very catered room. It's just a little tease of what the mastermind with me looks like. It's us actually doing it as if it's a mastermind. Paying clients go in it, as well as potential people that could be there. But it's all about like stepping into that next identity of yourself. It's about all these things that we have spoken about, right? It's about living in alignment in your purpose, stepping into that next version, breaking through all these identity barriers that you're having, and also the wealth energetics of it. Expanding that vessel. We'll do all the tangible tools that I do with my one-on-one clients, with my collective clients, all of it will go through it. It's a 2-day experience. Um, so yeah, if you're curious, I'm sure that we'll leave it in the show notes. If you just say that, you found me through the podcast, I will 100% extend that invitation to them. Um, yeah, that's really kind of what I can
Yeah.
offer for free, your listeners.
How exciting. And really too, I hope that someone who's listening, like if this is really resonating with you, that you jump into this workshop with Veronica. She is the real deal. You've heard more about her story and like what she has done and how she has done it. And sure, these concepts that we're talking about, I mean, vessel breaking, you're like, geez, that is some deep stuff. That's one of those things where it's like you get like lock arms with someone to go through that, what may feel like a valley, or to go through that transformative season like together, because going at it alone, number one, it's normally going to take a heck of a lot longer, and number two, then you're like peeling and you're grabbing for all of these tools when you've got someone who has walked the walk, someone who has done it herself, someone who has taught several of her clients how to do it at mass scale. So yeah, I really hope that folks check that out. We'll put that in the show notes. So, okay, we are wrapping up here. So what I do, I've got two things. So, two questions I've got to ask you. So the first one is, a lot of the stuff that just in general I talk about is like quitting the things that are no longer serving us. So I'm going to
Mhm.
leave it really open. When I say that phrase, like quitting the things that no longer serve us, what comes to mind?
For me, it's playing small.
So good.
It's
Playing.
it's the human nature, and we sometimes do it for conflicting ideas of what would that entitle. I know, offline we spoke about even just how we juggle like the household, like, being a wife, a partner, a girlfriend, whatever that is for you, versus building your business, and that balance between both. And I think we often forgo one for the other. So we stay small in both areas,
Mhm.
and you're doing yourself a disservice because you can have it all. It's just about breaking your vessel and to make it bigger, right?
Yeah.
It's expanding that vessel so that more goodness can drop in. So I think for me, it's the playing small.
Oh, it's so good. I love it when I ask that question. It's so insightful to like where folks are at and what's like really on their hearts. And I have yet to have a single person answer it the same way. So I love that. And I agree. I wish a lot more of us would quit playing small. We would tap into that limitless, that just potential and abundance that's available to us. So thank you for sharing. All right. Then the other thing that I do is, so each podcast guest, I have them leave a question for the next podcast guest. So first things first, okay, we're going to have
Mm.
you answer the question that was left for you. Okay. So the
Okay.
question from the last podcast guest is, what is your best billboard message on mindset?
Billboard message on mindset. Hmm.
I'm
Are we
sure
talking
you've
about are we talking about like a quote?
it's however, what, you know what, whatever you want to put on your billboard, you go for it.
I wouldn't say the vessel one just because it's not mine, but I would
But
say
the one was so good.
it was so good, but I can't take credit. It's spiritual wisdom.
Fair.
I would probably say it was a reflection that I had the other day of the biggest thing I would tell myself. The biggest lesson that I would want to give anyone is to understand that it's radical honesty and accountability. And here's where I would put like a subtitle in my billboard, because everybody thinks about that, but let me add some deeper ingraining. It's
Yes.
in a spiritual sense, we say that we picked even our parents and our situations. The soul picked it. So you blaming your parents or your situation, just blame yourself because you picked that vehicle for your soul to correct what you had to. And then number two, when you stop giving power away to others and to situations, and you start just seeing how you choose to react to whatever circumstance there is, you start gaining the power. So I would leave like an extreme ownership, uh, like accountability message on that.
So good. Again, you gave me the goosies. That was good. That was good. Heartfelt. Okay. So then last but not least, now you've got to leave a question for the next guest. And it could be anything, anything at all. And I mean, I may or may not know who the next guest is. I do, but that's what makes it fun. All right. What's your question? What do you think?
What is the worst thing that has happened to you that you feel others can't overcome? I'm sure they'll probably say something of like how to overcome it, but
Yeah.
a question that most people think that they can't go through it.
Okay, now this part I didn't necessarily tell you, but now I'm intrigued. I need to know your answer to that one.
Was this part of the script?
You're like, oh my gosh. Yeah, what is the worst thing that has happened that you feel others can't overcome?
Honestly, I see it very briefly, like you said, but I think most people would struggle maybe with doing that switch of deciding to just leave everything behind. You know, their source of, because I mind you, I didn't have a source of income for multiple
Mhm.
months. And just being like, you know what? I don't know what I'm gonna do, but F it. I'm
Um,
just gonna
uh,
quit everything and surrender to trusting that whatever is for me will come. I think
yeah,
we struggle to surrender. At least I was at one point. I was kind of agnostic atheist, and now I'm like completely religious, spiritual. But yeah, I think that's something that most people would struggle, like leaving their relationship, leaving their job, leaving their country where they had built their life, their identity, and then moving somewhere where they knew nothing, but just sounded so amazing.
I I'm
But
amazed, but I shouldn't be at how similar our answers are. Like that's my brain went to that same place where like my first initial thought was like, I think I think you can overcome anything. What I think it's like Marie Forleo who says like everything's
for
figure
Leo,
outable. Thank
hmm
you. Yes, like everything's figure outable, and I do believe that. I don't think that there's anything that we can't come back from when we make different choices. And
yeah,
I think that the choice and one of the reasons why like I'm doing the work I'm doing is because I am so I mean, I don't know, you call it an obsession. An obligation. I'm not quite sure which one. Maybe it's all of the above. Where it's like, I just see so many folks who are choosing to stay asleep at the wheel. And I
mhm,
think that that's the thing that people think that they can't overcome is that routine life, that mundaneness that we eat, sleep, work, repeat, and I think that folks think that that's not something that they can overcome. And I
yeah,
know that I mean that's one of the things why I'm like, no, we can. I believe there's so much more than being
yeah.
asleep at the wheel.
Well, but thank you for asking that question. Even it was a good reflection for me.
It was
Because even
thank you for you asked the question. Remember, you asked the question.
yeah, yeah.
Isn't that so funny, right? Like how sometimes we'll so unknowingly or like we'll gift someone
We'll
else a
get their own
reflection
gifts.
that maybe we needed ourselves too, but we gave it because we thought it was for someone else.
It's always
It's
for
not the
you.
gift we would do, but the way that we would give it, we would give the thing that we even need the most. We would
Yeah.
give it freely to somebody else. And yeah, so I'm glad that asking that question. It was something I just started, like asking these questions was just something I started this year, and it just keeps getting better and better. So
So
that was
good.
amazing. All right, my
Yeah.
friend, this was incredible. Thank you so much. Folks, if this episode, rang true with you, if it resonated, please, I'll make sure that Veronica's, all of her socials are going to be in the show notes. Get into her workshop, connect with her. She's an incredible human being, an incredible soul doing kingdom work, hands down. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. You're amazing.
Until next time, bye. Hey, thanks for listening to today's episode. It means the world to me that you're here to ride in the struggle bus with me and that you're willing to consider different perspectives, tools, and techniques that just might provide a little bit of relief and get you one step closer to the abundance that is available and waiting for us all. I hope you take a moment to grant yourself some grace where you've been denying it, some love where you didn't realize maybe it was right in front of you, and some faith where you thought all was lost. If this episode had an impact on you, would you please share a comment with a review? I'd love to hear what landed for you, and it helps us get the word out to our fellow struggle bus riders. So please review what was impactful for you. Just know these episodes are a pure labor of love in a space where I'm growing alongside you. I'm evolving every day, and I look forward to all the ways and the things and the perspectives and opinions and choices that will change over the course of time in my own life, day to day. Until next time, just know that you are loved, you are divinely cared for, and in the struggle, the journey of this life really is beautiful. I'm glad that we're in it together. Cheers.